Колеги,
Some colleagues, good afternoon. We are going to continue working day, and our topic is breaking local elections, Mariupol, urban sociology, pre-electoral moods. Our speakers are going to be head of the Gromadske TV, Pryazovia, Iryna Perkova, and Maria Podybailo, coordinator of the NGO Coordination Center Patriotic Forces New Mariupol, Kostyantyn Batozskyi. Iryna, how can you hear us? I hear you well, copy well. Good afternoon, colleagues. Again, we are very much grateful to the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center for giving us a chance to talk. We are going to talk about the forthcoming local elections in Mariupol. Our speakers today will be the heads of the NGOs and politologists in their specialization. We are going to have two professionals who understand what they are talking about, and give the floor to our speakers, Maria Podybailo and Kostyantyn. Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. Unfortunately, we are going to have a talk which will cover more topics than the elections. Kostyantyn, could you move the camera a bit to the left because we cannot see your face? Just a bit more, please. Superb, thank you. Thanks. We know about the speech of Poroshenko and Yuri Lutsenko. They told us about the possibility to cancel elections in the Ukrainian part of the Donbass area, and this news actually took us aback and actually shocked us because we never expected such a scenario. Due to that, I would like to voice a few of the thoughts, and I believe, based on the results of discussion in the Mariupol public activists and the Donetsk citizens, active citizens, I believe our opinions coincide on this specific topic. The major thesis which the speakers put forward as a reason of the possible cancellation of the elections and the safety of the citizens. I believe this kind of hypocrisy, because when we had the presidential elections last year in the Ukraine, for the participants in the election process and citizens as a whole, the hazard was much more, and the situation was more risky. They were actually putting their lives on the stakes. They were better. The polling stations were ruined, damaged, and they did not open the polling stations. It prevented them to do their task. And the efforts were not assessed or evaluated or even noticed. But based on the elections which took place in the Donbass area, when we opened over more than 30% of all the poll stations in this territory, taking into consideration that Mariupol was under the threat of occupation, was occupied, and Slaviansk was occupied, and many major populated areas were actually taken by the separatists. In those days, the efforts of those people to to hold the elections and to give the legitimacy to the then elected President Poroshenko were not properly, evaluated. Otherwise, if we didn't hold the elections here, the President Poroshenko would not be deemed legitimate president. As for the elections, they were accompanied by the shooting and bombardment. When Mariupol was under, we could hear the bursts and the outbursts of the shells. When our neighboring villages were attacked and our soldiers and citizens were killed, nobody took care of the electorate, and the elections took place because perhaps it was necessary. That's why, in our opinion, when this kind of the risk, the shell subsided, the risk is still there, to cancel elections, local elections, a kind of hypocrisy. And again, the elections are the only way for us to bring to the power new people and to translate into life some of the transformation changes. We really wish those transformations we have to do something and let's be honest. Let's say the pro-government parties are not something which are really liked by the local citizens. Let's be honest. It does mean they're Protestants or they're tuned against the government, but they are not satisfied with the process taking place here and the changes which were actually took place in the initiative from Kiev. That's the next item, the cancellation elections, actually the strengthening of the territorial segregation, because the first limitation of constitutional rights of citizens was associated with the introduction of the passes issued for the movement and limitation of the freedom to move. But again, we have, and the situation has not changed for the better. We still have the multi-kilometer lines to be issued the passes, and the territories suffer a lot because this region, I mean that the passes are issued in the way they're issued, and because with the cancellation on paper passes, the electronic system never became operative, and this kind of multi-stage control at the checkpoints. Also, people are checked by the bodyguards. That's why the introduction of the new passes are not understood by the people, and many people were deprived of the possibility to freely move and to trade freely, because that was the source of the income of small business here in these localities. That's why to deprive them the right to vote or to elect and be elected will be perceived by the people just as another attack, another unreasonable gesture on the part of Kiev, and hardly it will lead to a situation when in this region the separatist moves will subside here, and this has a very negative impact on the rating president, prime minister. This has to be taken into consideration by Kiev. Another issue is the status of the forced IDPs. Nobody knows whether they are going to have the right to vote or not. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people coming to the government control part of Ukraine, not only from Donbass area, but also from Crimea. If the elections are not going to be held here, that means that the people will deprive this right. I don't know whether the situation can be justified. And the matter of reconciliation in this country and the matter of survival under the circumstances of threat, I mean the situation will not be changed for the better. Everything boils down to the fact that the government doesn't have any clear strategy of find the way out of the situation, of this, neither strategy of war nor the strategy on the occupied returning the occupied territories back to Ukraine. This is something which we have to think about first of all. This where we have to concentrate, focus our efforts, because citizens of Ukraine has to know that their government and their president wish to do with the let's say rebel territory, and those people who actually moved to other parts of Ukraine, preserving the Ukraine in their hearts. So we have to change the authorities in the localities and help Ukraine to have a firm foot on the ground now. In the tool instrumental for that must be my most wide format of the roundtable discussion involving as many people as possible, with maybe within 4 intermediaries. But the task must be formulated in such a way so that our country has a clear plan how to find out of this situation, which could be shared by the majority of the population. Then we can win a victory. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Kostyantyn. Maria, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. I fully share the words by Kostyantyn. Yesterday, the community in Mariupol, in spite of whether they are willing or not to participate in the election, were really disappointed. People spoke of probably staging protest actions and somehow pressing the government in an attempt to cancel the decision. to get rid of that feeling that they are living in a kind of reservation. And I think cities like Mariupol have already proven it. They're quite independent, and their local communities are quite proactive in deciding their everyday living matters. But still we see the same policy continued and at the local level, the one that we've had for 20 more years. We have long-standing parties. But again, we see this bad heritage, toxic heritage, with local party representatives failing to provide information about their decisions, about their intentions to community members. And I think it is very important to somehow specify the messages rather than speaking in some general terms like let's fight the evil with the good, etc. Some concrete steps need to be made, and not a single political party has been able to build a proper network or structure of contacts at the local level, and we see it now. The questions remain as to the technology, voting technology that will be used. There is a simple question of why not a single political party was able to have a meeting at the time of the last parliamentary election to talk to people. Yeah, we see MPs come into the region, but they never talk to the people here. The responsibility for the choice to be made by the voter should be with voters themselves. Yet politicians do not work with voters, and we would really like to express our wish, given the level of elections, which are going to be local elections, and given the proclaimed decentralization cause, to see better chances for local communities to articulate their own needs, their ideas of how the region should develop, instead of continued use of those mothballed blank concepts of let's fight evil, let's make life better. True patriots in cities like Mariupol, Krasnoarmeysk, Artemivsk, they did participate, and they are still participating in the defense of their territories, and people seeing no real tools to ensure their voting and their involvement in government and state corporations are really thinking about skipping the voting procedure altogether. People in Mariupol need some strategy of development, a strategy of urban development, and they want it to be of their own, not the strategy suggested from Kiev, from above. They want to have better say in everything, yet people see they've been stripped of this chance. If this is true, then why do we speak of decentralization? Where are these signs of decentralization? We would really like to ask our senior fellow colleagues in Kiev to show more attention and more respect to intentions and ideas and understandings and visions of the people at the local level who have to endure these war conditions, and they have really something to say. Let us make it more open. Every government in Ukraine tries to change the legislation to suit itself. It's a long-standing political tradition in Ukraine, but we need to break this tradition, to stop changing election legislation on the eve of each coming election. The very discussion about some needs to postpone adoption of legislation until the very last moment, and the very close, opaque nature of this political process is the top problem in Ukraine of today. The country does not need it anymore. These pre-agreed arrangements, rigged arrangements done from the top, they really lead to abysmal situations and violations at the local level. Because, again, all the negative experience that comes from the above finally settles at the local level. And this is more a question to parliamentarians. Please understand what are you doing. Please comprehend what spell can you do on this country. Thank you, Kostyantyn. Thank you, Marina. It's time for questions now. Good afternoon, Tatiana Garkova, UCMC. First of all, I'd like to express my full support of you. Also, there are questions to elections, upcoming elections, really. We've seen no change of the government in Mariupol, local government in Mariupol, since the start of the war. What is their attitude towards the upcoming elections? And the second question is, what are the resources that you may mobilize to defend people's right to vote at the local elections? And under people, I mean those people with consciousness, with patriotic behaviors. You do know that the city mayor in Mariupol has been in the office for 17 years. That means he's got quite an experienced guy, able to negotiate everything with any sort of government, whatever it is there, and he will be surely oriented further on to check for reactions of the central government and the supreme powers of the country. This is his characteristic trait that no one will be able to change given the age and the experience. But still, probably, there could be possibility to change, to have another mayor in the city. And with these upcoming amendments, we see that we have been stripped of this chance. The question is whether people, local community members, have enough instruments in their hands to bring in some meaningful changes in the city and in the region. Really, it begs the question, how many people can we bring to the streets to protest this adulteration of the voting rights? Here in the region, we feel we are on the front line every day. We bring all necessary supplies to hospitals. We learn how to improve civic society institutes in our city. We do our best to participate in everyday life of our city. So by saying that, I mean we may not see massive protests in the city, but it is about a very bad aftertaste that these changes will leave in people. And my friend Kostyantyn is extremely right when he says that we are being stripped of the most basic democracy tools, and this brings question about our future. During the Maidan, I had a chance to talk to many of my colleagues from other regions of Ukraine, from Lviv, etc. And we heard things like, okay, you're from Donbass, go back to Russia and leave us alone. I can assure you that this type of position is not the one to build upon our future. And this really undermines trust in the central government. And we also need to be ready for all sorts of manipulations that can come. And there is a saying in the United States that without proper representation, no taxes can come. And again, this makes a very reasonable question as to where do local taxes go, those taxes that have been collected at the local level. May I remind you that we have two big metal works in Mariupol, bringing some real money to the country, and they provide huge employment possibilities for locals. And I would not dare to forecast the attitude and the reactions of big businesses. If the local government is to say that we are going to institute some special rules of the game, be it about permits to go to and from the conflict zone, or some Minsk agreement related considerations, then we should not be surprised to see our adversaries using these things to play their card.
Just a small clarification. There is information that he actually declared that he wasn't going to participate in the local elections. Were there any declarations, statements, I mean, from the local authority, I mean, from Perkova or anybody else regarding the attitude? Was there a clear position there, but or not? No, there was no position. We just came to know about that information only yesterday, and there was no press conferences or statements since then. Thank you, Maria. Are there any questions or clarifications? So please introduce yourself. Sergei Kutnikov, Man Inform Agency. The question to Maria. What can be a kind of attention on the part of Kyiv or Ukraine to the city of the Saint Maria, Mariupol, and accordingly what kind of actions on the public authorities and the, let's say, public sector, I mean, the citizens' activities could help the situation, both in the election situation and to raise the Ukrainians, so to say, plank of the level. You know better than me that all the newspapers in Mariupol are the Russian language ones, and all TV channels are the Russian speaking ones. And only one column in the Journal, the source newspaper, is published in Ukrainian language. This is not the norm for the Ukrainian city. For a Ukrainian city, if you go into a shop that and they ask, you need to pay so many rubles. You know, maybe over the last few years I talked thousands and thousands of times with the salesman there, but they were talking not about green but rubles. Thank you. You know, Sergei, the issue of the language was put beyond the brackets during these elections campaign, not only in Mariupol, but Ukraine. You know, I'm a Ukrainian-speaking person, you know. And for all those years, I was quite comfortable to live in this city. Yeah, you know, I had no questions about that. If you recently visited Mariupol, perhaps you saw that what a number of Mariupol citizens, Russian-speaking citizens, they're shouting "Glory to Ukraine," etc. They're representatives of different ethnic groups, not only Ukrainians. So this language is not accentuated today. In Mariupol, I mean the language issue. I agree that the majority of different TV programs must be Ukrainian language, but but anyway, we try to do something. We are trying to speak more Ukrainian, and it means many people start to speak Ukrainian, which talks about their loyalty, and perhaps this issue to change the situation is a more long-term one. You were up to say that in the city there are none, but the corporate mass media. But we have to work on that issue, and perhaps we need the help from on the part of the independent foundations, investors, and the community to make them the kind of social mass media. Also, we need the assistance on the part of the state. The Minister of the Information must be instrumental in creating such kind of independent mass media. This could be where we can talk about Ukrainian speaking, Ukrainian language, or the non-Ukrainian language. This is not very important what kind of language is going to be used to deliver information. Most important, the content they are going to deliver. For example, what is important to me, I've been deprived today the right to vote, myself and many other people. You have to remember that the brand of the Mariupol citizens of the city as well, which is at the defense line. When we actually came to understand that we actually this first destiny of Kyiv, Donetsk, Lugansk are in store for us. When we came to understand that the city can disappear, like it was the case with other occupied or captured cities, so we talked to ourselves, to citizens of Mariupol. 7,000 of people took to the street be under the bombardment by grad and some other heavy weaponry. We said that we are going to do what we would like to do. Those were mostly the Russian-speaking citizens of Ukraine, Russian-speaking citizens of Mariupol belonging to different ethnic groups, and they took to the street, they came out to the street to take part in that rally. And the fact that they deprived us of the right to vote, this is kind of, this is actually the major crime. They actually betrayed us, a kind of betrayal. See who is standing in the sector M, or people which were fighting in other sectors. They would say that they call Mariupol the volunteer city today, and now when you're going to take away some of these saplings, the small growth of the democratic structure, and we actually shoulder this responsibility for that happening, and now they are depriving us the right to vote. We have just a few minutes. Continue. What to add something? Please be brief. I made my own conclusion. Came to the conclusion that we cannot any longer divide the people of Ukraine to those who are for Ukraine, those who are against Ukraine. This is the only division we can talk about. Any other, let's say, things are absolutely secondary to me. I believe that first of all we have to get the victory, and then we'll be able to resolve any other problems. And the more friends and the more allies we'll have in this along those lines, the better. I would like to intervene. I would like to remind you that you encourage learn to speak English, Ukrainian. I mean, but this no good to the Ukrainian society if you're talking about the language. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Kostyantyn. Thank you, Iryna. This is the end of our briefing. We are going to make our meetings regular once a week on a weekly basis. So thank you, and here and see you.